This happened a few days ago. I was a bartender at this old tavern where I worked for years. It should have been a simple wake for my childhood friend, Mike. But as I stood behind the bar, pouring drinks, I felt something was off. The air felt heavier than usual. People kept glancing over their shoulders, whispering. During the wake, I noticed Mike's family huddled in a corner. They were crying, but not for him. They sounded like they were mourning something else. My heart sank. I approached slowly, but they turned away, their faces twisted like they held a secret I couldn't understand. I felt a knot in my stomach. What were they hiding? Deep down, I felt I was missing something important. After the wake, things got stranger. I returned to work the next day, but the tavern felt different. The lights flickered like they were stuttering. The beer taps hissed louder. Whispers seemed to rise from the shadows, crawling under my skin. Every time Mike's name came up, his family shifted uncomfortably. They murmured about the truth and the deal. Was I just paranoid? I couldn't shake it. One evening I heard one of Mike's relatives in the back room. I leaned against the wall trying to hear. They were talking about something Mike had buried deep, something everyone seemed to know. My heart raced. What if there was something dark? What if I was too close to see? I glanced around. The shadows felt thicker, heavier, like they were watching me. I couldn't shake the feeling that the tavern was alive. I glimpsed movement at the edges of my vision, shapes that vanished when I turned. Each time I poured a drink, I thought about Mike's odd tears at the wake. It was like he was begging me for help. Maybe I had failed him. Closing up one night, the cold air made my skin prickle. The lights flickered, and the corner of the room seemed to move. Then I heard it again. Whispers cutting through the silence. The truth must come out. I spun around, but there was nobody there. Just me and the heavy shadows. Suddenly it dawned on me. What if Mike's family wasn't just grieving? What if they were guarding something? Something alive? Maybe their secret was more dangerous than I imagined. A chill ran down my spine. I knew I had to find out what really happened. As I turned to leave, the door creaked open slowly. My heart pounded. Who was there? I took a deep breath and stepped forward, peering into the darkness. Then I saw him, Mike. But he didn't look right. His eyes were hollow, filled with an emptiness. I froze, unable to move. "Help me," he whispered, but it sounded more like a warning than a plea. I blinked, and he was gone. Just the shadows and whispers remained. What had I stepped into? What secret was waiting for me? The next morning, I woke up with an uneasy feeling that clung to me like a wet blanket. It didn't help that I only slept a couple of hours. The shadows from last night danced in my mind. I couldn't shake the image of Mike's hollow eyes. What had he seen? What was he trying to tell me? I stumbled out of bed and poured myself a cup of coffee, hoping to clear my head. The caffeine made my hands shake slightly. I couldn't stay in this fog. I grabbed my jacket and headed out the door. I needed answers. I decided to visit Mike's family. Maybe they would open up to me now that the wake was over. I drove over to their house, my stomach in knots. As I approached, I noticed that the curtains were drawn tight. No signs of life. My heart raced. I knocked, but no one answered. I waited, hoping someone would show, but silence surrounded me like a thick fog. Frustrated, I turned to leave when a voice called out from behind me. It was Sarah, Mike's sister. She looked worn out, as if she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red, and she shifted nervously. "Hey, can we talk?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She hesitated, glancing back at the house. Then she nodded and led me to a small bench in the yard. I could sense something was wrong. "What happened, Sarah?" At the wake, it felt like everyone was hiding something. I pressed. Her face paled. She looked like she didn't want to speak, but there was a fire in her eyes, like she was trying to fight off a wave of emotions. We don't understand it all. Mike was involved in something that... She began, before trailing off, as if the words were too heavy to carry. I leaned closer. What did he get into? Please, I need to know. Sarah took a shaky breath. It's not just about losing him. There was a deal he made with someone. I thought it was just a phase, something he'd get over, but he never did. My head spun. A deal? What kind of deal? Her voice dropped to a whisper. He said he had to protect us. That's why we feel different. Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from inside the house. Panic shot through me. What was that? Her face drained of color. I don't know. I thought we were safe. We should go inside. We rushed toward the door, but as soon as we stepped inside, I felt a wave of ice-cold air. The shadows loomed larger. The whispers grew louder, swirling around us like angry spirits. Then everything went dark. I blinked, and Sarah was gone. Only the shadows remained, pressing in around me. Fear gripped me, and I stumbled back. "Sarah!" I shouted, but there was no answer. Just silence stretched out, an eerie emptiness that wrapped around me like a noose. What had just happened? I needed to find her and get out of here. I took a step forward, my heart racing wildly. This couldn't be the end. I had to uncover the truth, even if the truth itself was hiding in the darkness. I blinked again, scanning the darkness. My heart thudded in my chest, loud and unforgiving. "Sarah!" I called, my voice trembling in the void. There was no response. I was alone, swallowed by the shadows. Just then, I spotted a faint flicker of light in the corner of the room. I took a step toward it, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity. The air around me felt heavy, charged with something I couldn't define. With each step I took, the shadows seemed to ripple, closing in on me. As I approached the light, I realized it was coming from Mike's laptop. It sat on the table, the screen illuminating the space like a beacon in the night. I hesitated, glancing back into the dark. Sarah had vanished, and I didn't want to end up like her. But I needed answers, and the laptop might hold them. I reached for the device, my fingertips brushing against the keyboard. It sprung to life with a few keystrokes, glowing bright in the dim room. The desktop background was a picture of Mike and Sarah during happier times, a reminder of what once was. My heart twisted. I had no idea what I was looking for, but I started opening folders. One titled Deals caught my eye. I clicked. Inside I found documents filled with names and figures I didn't recognize. My pulse quickened as I read snippets, references to exchange and consequences. My stomach churned. What had Mike gotten himself wrapped up in? Then a file labeled Final Entry stood out. I opened it. The words typed in hurried strokes filled the screen with a desperate urgency. I didn't want to involve anyone else, but it's too late. They're watching. I made a mistake. I thought I could handle it, but now I see the truth. If I don't... Before I could read more, the room shuddered. The cold air intensified and the shadows whispered. They wrapped tightly around me, their persistent murmurs growing louder. I felt dizzy, like the world was tilting. I forced myself to focus and read on. "Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm so sorry. I didn't protect you like I promised. You must leave while you still can." A loud bang echoed from behind me, cutting through the tension. I nearly jumped. I turned, half expecting to see Sarah reappear, but it was worse. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway. "Who are you?" I shouted, panic rising like bile in my throat. The figure stepped forward, and the chill in the room deepened. I could see their face now, a twisted smile that sent icy tendrils of fear through me. "Oh, it's you, the one who poked their nose where it doesn't belong." I backed away, heart racing. "What do you want?" The figure laughed softly, a sound that echoed ominously against the walls. "What do you think?" "I want what Mike promised me, and it seems you might be the key to unlocking it." I glanced back at the laptop, at the file still open on the screen. This was more complicated than I had imagined. The shadows writhed around me, and I realized I wasn't just fighting for answers, I was fighting for my life. As the figure stepped closer, I lunged for the door. I had to get out. I couldn't let this darkness take me too. I dashed for the door, adrenaline powering my legs. The figure lunged after me, laughter echoing in my ears, bouncing off the walls. With a surge of panic, I flung the door open and stumbled into the hallway, the cold air hitting me like a slap. I could hear him behind me, footsteps quickening, each step heavy with threat. I ran without thinking, weaving through the dimly lit space. My heart pounded, each beat frantic and urgent. I could hear the sound of my breaths mixing with the thud of my pulse. I glanced back, but the shadowy figure was still at the door, silhouetted against the flickering light behind him. I had momentarily bought myself some precious seconds. I reached the stairs and raced down, my mind racing faster than my feet. I needed to find somewhere safe, somewhere to think. My first instinct was the attic. It was isolated, a forgotten space where I could gather my thoughts and figure this out. I pushed through the front door, lunging outside into the night. The air was crisp and heavy, like a blanket smothering me. As I approached the house's back entrance, my foot snagged on something. I stumbled, catching myself just in time. Looking down, I realized it was a small, unmarked envelope. Curiosity surged, overriding my fear for just a moment. I hesitated, glancing around. No one was in sight. Taking a deep breath, I picked it up. Opening it, I found a single sheet of paper with 2 words scrawled in messy handwriting. Trust no one. My stomach dropped. Mike had written those words, hadn't he? Was he warning me, or worse, confirming that the threat was far-reaching? The shadows felt closer now, as if they were creeping in on me even in broad daylight. I ducked behind a tree, crumpling the note in my fist. I was sitting duck in the open, and the shadows were everywhere. Suddenly, a rustling noise broke through the oppressive silence. I strained my ears, freezing in place. Was it him, the figure? Had he followed me? Then I heard a voice, a whisper carried on the wind. "You shouldn't be here." It was familiar. Sarah. I felt my breath catch. I blinked, thinking maybe it was my mind playing tricks. But the voice came again, a soft plea laced with desperation. "You need to leave." I stood up, heart racing to a new beat. "Sarah, where are you?" I called, moving cautiously toward the sound. Was she hidden nearby, trapped in one of the shadows? The reply came as a sharp hiss through the trees. "Not here. They're listening." A sudden rush of fear filled me. Whoever was after Mike was now coming for me. The intensity of the moment flooded in, and I realized the gravity of the situation. The truth of the darkness was stretching further than I could comprehend. I glanced around, but saw nothing. No sign of Sarah, no sign of danger from the figure. Just the shadows creeping along the edges of my vision. I had to think. But what could I do? Before I could respond, the whisper came again, frantic now. "Get to the safe house. They can help." "Safe house?" I asked. But the voice faded, leaving only an unsettling silence. I stood there, heart hammering, mind racing. Then everything felt wrong. Shadows gathered, moving with intent. Panic surged through me again, and I bolted towards the street, ignoring the confusion. I had to find this safe house. Whatever secrets it held might be the key to saving both myself and Sarah. I sprinted down the street, the adrenaline propelling me forward despite the cold biting at my skin. The darkness engulfed everything around me, my mind racing with thoughts of Sarah and the danger we were in. What was this safe house? Would it really be a sanctuary or just another trap? Distant streetlights flickered weakly, struggling against the night. Each shadow felt alive, as if they were watching me. I skidded to a halt at a corner, trying to remember the last location Sarah mentioned. It had been in passing, a hushed conversation about a friend's old house outside of town. If I could find it, maybe I could find her. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, praying it was a message from her. But no, it was just a notification. I cursed under my breath. I couldn't afford to be distracted. I needed a plan. Suddenly my instincts screamed at me and I turned sharply, eyes scanning the street. There was someone behind me, moving silently, ghost-like. I couldn't make out their features, but they moved with purpose, creeping closer. I ducked into a narrow alley, hoping to avoid being seen. My back pressed against the cold, damp wall as I held my breath, anxiously waiting. The figure paused at the entrance, glancing around, searching. I could feel my heart thrumming in my ears, drowning out everything else. I didn't dare breathe too loud. Then I saw a glimmer from the figure's hand, a flash of metal, a knife. My stomach twisted. I couldn't stay hidden forever. Gritting my teeth, I made a decision. I would take my chances and run. As I bolted from the alley, I almost collided with a moving shadow. I stumbled backward, nearly losing my footing. But then, "Sarah!" I cried out, recognizing the silhouette as she quickly moved toward me. "Go!" she shouted urgently, grabbing my wrist. "They're right behind you." I didn't need to ask who they were. With Sarah pulling me forward, we dashed down a side street. My pulse raced, fear blending with the hope of finding safety. "You shouldn't have come back," she gasped, looking over her shoulder. "You have to trust me." "Where's the safe house?" I panted, our breaths mingling in the freezing air. I needed answers. They were closing in, the looming threat not just a whisper now. "Just keep running," she insisted, dragging me further into the night. Then everything seemed to shift. The sound of footsteps multiplied behind us, more than one set. I glanced back, my heart dropping as I saw a group of shadowed figures appearing from around the corner, their intentions unmistakably menacing. "Sarah, we can't outrun them," I shouted, panic surging forward. But she didn't respond. Instead, she veered sharply toward an old, abandoned house, the paint peeling like memories forgotten. "In here," she urged. We ducked inside just as the footsteps thundered closer, the pounding echoing off the walls. I took a moment to catch my breath, but Sarah's eyes were wild with fear. "This is a dead end," I realized. "What do we do now?" That's when I saw it. A latch on the wall, a way down. "What is that?" I asked, barely holding on to my frantic thoughts. Sarah pushed it open. "A basement. Hurry, it's our only chance." Before I could say anything more, Sarah was already pulling me down, and I followed her into the darkness, my mind racing. Would we find safety here? Or had we just stepped deeper into the trap? I barely had time to process the cold air enveloping us as we descended into the basement. The door creaked ominously as Sarah closed it behind us, plunging us into darkness. My eyes strained to adjust, but all I could make out were vague outlines and shadows that felt suffocating. "Do you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. I strained my ears, filtering out the distant chaos of the outside world. The footsteps above us had stopped, replaced by an unsettling silence that wrapped around us like a thick blanket. My heart raced anew. "What's happening up there?" I asked, nearly choking on the tension in the air. Just hold on," she replied, her breath quickening. "We just need to wait a moment." I searched the darkness for a source of light. "Any candles? A flashlight?" I asked, trying to keep the fear at bay. The uncertainty gnawed at me. "There might be something over there," she said, pointing to the far end of the cellar. "Just stay close." Carefully, we shuffled forward. My hands brushed against the damp, rough walls as I moved, searching for anything that could pierce the darkness. The musty scent of old wood and mold mixed with a tang of metal that made my stomach churn. Then I felt it, something beneath my foot. I stumbled slightly and planted my hand on Sarah's shoulder to steady myself. "What was that?" I asked, half expecting something to leap out at us. "I don't know," Sarah said, her voice breaking slightly. "But we need to keep going." We reached a dusty shelf lined with crates. I crouched down, hoping for a miracle. As I rifled through, I found an old flashlight. With a shaky hand, I clicked it on. The beam illuminated the room, casting eerie shadows across the bare walls. "Thank God," I muttered. "Now we can see." But my relief was short-lived. Something in the corner caught my eye. Small, dark shapes. I aimed the flashlight toward them and gasped. It was a collection of old photographs, all seemingly abandoned there, coated with dust. "What is it?" Sarah asked, sensing my unease. I knelt to pick one up. The image was blurry, but I could make out faces, familiar faces. These people, they're part of the group from the other night, the ones at Sarah's party. But they looked different, older. As I flipped through the stack, each photograph seemed to draw me further in. But something was off. Next to one of the photos, the name Brian was scribbled in a frantic hand. My mind raced. Brian was missing, part of the group that had all vanished. "Sarah, do you see this?" I asked, my voice dropping. "What happened to them?" Her expression darkened as she leaned closer. "I don't know, but we need to get out of here. They could find us any second." Before I could respond, I froze. There was a noise, a faint shuffle resonating from above. I shined the flashlight toward the basement door. Shadows flickered along the edges, and I felt my heart drop. Someone was there. "Quick, hide!" I hissed, dragging Sarah behind a large crate just as the footprints started again, heavy and deliberate. The footsteps above grew louder and more distinct, echoing down the staircase. I held my breath, praying they wouldn't hear our frantic whispers. My heart pounded in my chest, matching the rhythm of the steps. "Do you think they know we're here?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely above a murmur. "I don't know," I replied, feeling cold sweat trickle down my back. "But we can't make a sound." The footsteps paused right above us, and I heard the unmistakable creak of floorboards as someone shifted their weight. My mind raced with questions. Who was it? What did they want? My eyes darted around in the flickering light, searching for a way out. Then everything went still. For a moment I dared to hope they had moved on, but that hope was quickly dashed when a voice pierced the silence. "Brian, are you down there?" The voice was low, almost casual, but it sent chills down my spine. I exchanged a frantic glance with Sarah, who had gone pale. "We need to stay quiet," I whispered fiercely. The voice continued, an eerie calm settling over it. "I know you're down there, and I know you found something." My stomach twisted. It felt like they knew not only we were hiding, but also what we had discovered. Both of us pressed ourselves against the cold, rough wood of the crate, praying to disappear. "Look, it's pointless to hide," the voice said, sounding closer now. "We can reach an understanding. You already stumbled upon things better left unseen. Just come out, and I'll explain everything." "Like hell I will," I muttered under my breath. I had no intention of trusting whoever this was. Suddenly the basement door rattled, slamming against the wall as it swung open. A tall figure stepped in, silhouetted against the dim light from the hallway. My breath hitched. I squinted, trying to make out their features, but the beam from my flashlight betrayed me, illuminating only hints of their face and a cruel smirk. "Look who we have here," the figure chuckled darkly. "Just two curious kids playing detective. How adorable." They took a step forward, and panic surged. Sarah's hand gripped mine tightly as we held our breath, aware that we were now caught between what we'd discovered and the looming presence before us. From behind the figure, a faint noise rose, like the rustling of something being dragged across the floor. My eyes widened when I caught sight of a dark object slithering into view. It was long and coiled, glinting in the flashlight's beam. "Now let's make this simple," the figure said, their smile fading. You can either come with me quietly or... The words trailed off, replaced by the sound of the object hitting the floor with a heavy thud. I felt the weight of dread settle in my stomach. There was no choice here. They were offering nothing but a deal that came with unthinkable consequences. "Run!" I yelled suddenly, yanking Sarah's hand as I dashed toward the side of the room. The path was narrow, and I had no clue where it led, but I couldn't waste another second. Behind us, the figure laughed, echoing through the basement. "Running won't save you. You can't outrun the truth." That only fueled my desperation as we barreled deeper into the shadows, searching for any means of escape. The moment we darted into the darkness, my mind raced. I couldn't let fear paralyze me. Adrenaline kicked in, pushing us forward, but I didn't know where we were going. The basement seemed to stretch on, every corner cloaked in shadows. "Where do we go?" Sarah gasped, tugging at my sleeve. I could hear panic creeping into her voice. "Just keep moving," I urged. The sound of that figure's mocking laughter faded, but I knew they wouldn't stay silent for long. We sprinted through the gloom until we reached a wall. I turned, scanning for another exit. A flickering bulb revealed a thin, jagged opening just to our left, leading to what looked like a storage area piled high with boxes. "Over there," I pointed, and we rushed toward it. Hunched over the debris, I felt the cold, damp air surrounding us. The muffled sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, coming closer. My heart dropped. They were coming for us. As we squeezed through the narrow space between the boxes, I felt something shift beneath my foot. I glanced down and saw a loose floorboard, slightly raised. "Wait, look!" I pointed it out to Sarah. "What?" she replied, peering through the darkness. I pulled up the board, revealing a small compartment beneath it. Stunned, I reached in and my fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. I pulled it out, my flashlight beam reflecting off an old, tarnished key. "Brian, what is that?" Sarah whispered. "Maybe it's for a door or something," I said, pocketing it quickly. My thoughts spun. We might be able to use it to escape, but we had to find a door first. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from the other side of the basement. The figure had found our trail and was closing in. "We need to go. Now," I urged, pulling Sarah toward the back of the storage area where boxes were stacked haphazardly. I noticed a door slightly ajar behind the mess, leading into another room. As we approached, I could feel my pulse quicken. Throwing the door wide, I carefully poked my head inside the room. It looked like a makeshift office, cluttered with files and old furniture, but it didn't matter. The faint glow of daylight seeped through a grimy window at the far end. "Let's go," I said, racing inside. We had to make it out before that shadow caught up to us. Sarah followed, but just as I was about to reach the window, a deafening crash rang out behind us. The door burst open. I turned, my heart sinking as the figure stepped across the threshold, a menacing silhouette in the dim light. "Did you really think you could hide?" they growled, stepping closer. The entire room felt charged with danger. "I'm not going back!" I shouted, adrenaline surging. I glanced at the key still clutched in my hand, and then back at Sarah, who was petrified. "We have to do this." As I made one final push toward the window, something clicked in my mind. That key. Maybe it wasn't just for any door. I felt a flicker of hope, but doubt gnawed at me. Could it unlock a way out, or was it just another false lead in this nightmare? Just as the figure lunged forward, I heard the unmistakable sound of the key hitting the floor. It rolled away, echoing my panic within this dark, suffocating space. I turned back to Sarah's panicked face, pulling her toward the window. We didn't have much time left. We needed to jump. Now. I leaped through the window, hoping the rough ground below wouldn't knock the breath out of me. I landed with a thud, the impact jarring my legs, but I barely registered the pain. "Brian, hurry!" Sarah's voice drifted through the opening just as I turned to look up. I reached for her, just as she teetered and fell through, following me into the wild, overgrown yard. Gasping for air, we scrambled to our feet. Before I could catch my breath, I glanced back at the window. The figure was just behind the glass, its face obscured but its intention clear. It was unhindered by the glass that separated us. "We need to get out of here," I urged, grabbing Sarah's hand. We dashed toward the edge of the yard where a dilapidated fence leaned precariously. Outside, the sun was just beginning to rise, casting an eerie light on the gravel road. The thought of safety kept us moving. "Where do we go now?" Sarah wheezed, trying to match my pace. "I don't know," I shouted back. My mind raced, searching for options. "We just need to get away from here." We reached the fence and I threw my weight against a weak spot, hoping it would give way. To my relief, the wood splintered under the pressure, and we slipped through the opening. But just as we stepped into the street, a familiar sound reached my ears, an engine revving. I turned to see a black van idling at the end of the road, its tinted windows reflecting the early morning light, as if beckoning us to approach. "Is it them?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "I don't know," I said, panic welling in my chest again. "But we can't wait to find out." I started running, pulling her along with me. The van didn't move, but it lingered like a storm cloud in the distance, and my heart raced harder. I recalled the key in my pocket and felt a surge of desperation. Maybe it could help us find a place to hide, or at least a way to fight back. "Brian, what if they see us?" Sarah's voice trembled. I stopped, scanning the area. There were no other vehicles, no other people around us. Just the lingering shadows of the trees lining the street. "We can't stay here," I replied. Something told me the figure inside the basement wouldn't give up easily. That's when I saw it. A small building down the road. Faded letters spelled out, "Community Center." "There, we can hide there." "But what about the key?" Sarah's question made me hesitate. "It might not even work," I said. "But we need a plan, and standing here is not it." We hurried toward the center. A few hollow thuds echoed behind us. I didn't dare look back. My instincts were screaming that we had to keep moving. Breaking through the door, we found ourselves in a dim hallway. The air was thick and stale, hanging in the silence like a whisper of past gatherings. I pulled the key from my pocket, glancing at the old wooden doors lining the walls. "What if we locked ourselves in somewhere?" Sarah suggested, her voice sounding hopeful yet terrified. "Maybe," I murmured, trying to focus. "But which door? We don't have time." I felt the cold metal of the key weigh heavily in my palm. Suddenly the sound of footsteps grew louder, closing in fast. We had to decide, and we had to decide now. My heart pounded in my chest as I scanned the hall. I spotted a door at the end, sturdier than the others, as if it had been made to withstand whatever darkness lingered here. "That one!" I shouted, my voice breaking the silence. We sprinted toward it, and I fumbled with the key. My fingers trembled as I slid it into the lock. It clicked open with a satisfying sound that was quickly drowned out by the footsteps echoing just outside. "Quick," I urged, shoving the door wide and pulling Sarah in behind me, closing it just as the footsteps halted. The room was dark, save for a sliver of light seeping through a dirty window. Dust clung to the air, making it thick and choking. I turned the bolt, securing our escape for now, but the reality of our situation hung heavy in the air. "What now?" Sarah whispered, her panic evident. The shadows crept in, the weight of our predicament pressing against us. "I don't know," I admitted, feeling helpless. "We can't just sit here and wait." I moved toward the window, peering through the grime. The van still sat there, ominously still. "Do you think they'll come inside?" I don't know," Sarah stammered. "They could be anywhere." Just then, a loud bang resonated from the door we had just closed. I turned sharply, stepping away from the window, my instincts roaring that we needed to move again. "Look!" Sarah said, pointing to a pile of old boxes stacked in the corner, their surfaces covered in dust and cobwebs. Maybe we can hide. Nodding in agreement, we rushed over and piled ourselves behind them. The dark was enveloping, and I felt the sting of cold sweat on my forehead. I listened, ears straining against the silence, drowning out the chaos within. As we huddled in the shadows, panic surged through me again. "Brian," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "What if they find us?" I didn't have an answer. All I could do was remember Mike's face, his frantic plea. What had he gotten into? I couldn't shake the image of that twisted smile I had glimpsed earlier. I was in a place I couldn't fully understand, teetering between reality and something darker. Another loud bang resonated against the door, and the room grew colder. I had the fleeting idea of using the key. If we could find some secret passage or get out through a back door, maybe it would lead to safety. But how could I even know which door was which? Before I could voice that thought, the door burst open. The figure stood silhouetted in the frame, surrounded by an expanse of darkness that gleamed like stars. The voice of our pursuer twisted around us. "Are you going to come out, or do I have to come in after you?" Both Sarah and I held our breaths, pinned against the boxes in fear. The moment felt unreal, like an awful dream that wrapped tighter the longer we hid. "He knows we're here," I muttered, eyes darting around, searching for an exit. It felt like time was slipping, the seconds stretching into an eternity. "Please, I just want to make this easy for you," the figure tried again, attempting to coax us out. "Trust me, this doesn't have to end badly." There was a pause. I could feel Sarah's eyes on me, wide and searching. What if this was our only chance? But I still didn't know who they were or what they wanted. I felt the weight of the key in my pocket, and in a split-second decision, I pulled it out. "Let's see what this unlocks," I murmured to Sarah, just loud enough for her to hear. Before she could react, I slipped away from our hiding spot. My heart thudded as I crept toward the door I'd noticed earlier, the one that appeared older than the rest. I placed the key in the lock just as that figure stepped inside, their gaze lazy but predatory. My hand trembled, and I could hear Sarah's panicked breaths behind me. Just as I turned the key, the figure turned its attention toward me. "Don't!" they shouted, but it was already too late. The door swung open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling down into darkness. Without thinking, I plunged forward and grabbed Sarah's wrist, pulling her along with me. We rushed down the stairs, the air chill and damp, feeling like we were charging straight into the abyss, away from the light and safety. Behind us, the sound of footsteps thundered near. Our pursuer wasn't far behind. "You can't escape!" they yelled, a wicked glee in their voice. I felt Sarah's grip tighten as we propelled ourselves downward, the sound of our racing hearts drowned out by the chaos above. My skin prickled with fear. I didn't know what awaited us at the bottom, but we couldn't afford to stop. We had to escape whatever darkness awaited above. Then I caught a glimpse of light filtering through the crevices of the staircase. Hope ignited within me. "There's something down here," I yelled, urging Sarah to keep moving. Finally, we reached the bottom, a small space lit dimly by a flickering bulb. The walls were bare, and at the far end there was another door, half open, hinting at the unknown beyond. "Come on!" I splayed my arm out, catching Sarah's eye, and we rushed toward the door. I threw it open, my heart pounding with adrenaline, but what lay beyond made us both freeze. In the dim light, beneath a stained fabric draped over a table, were old photographs, the very images we'd seen earlier in the basement, but weathered and faded. Some were of people I recognized, others blurred faces engulfed in shadows. More unsettling, they appeared to depict gatherings, nights filled with smiles that hid something deeper, darker. "This doesn't make sense," Sarah breathed raggedly. "What is this place?" I felt a chill creep down my spine and instinctively reached out for her hand. "I don't know, but we need to keep moving." Just then, the door behind us slammed shut, echoing into the silence. An eerie feeling washed over me, as if something had shifted in the atmosphere. "We're trapped," Sarah whispered, eyes welling up with panic. "No," I shouted, forcing my mind to stay focused. "We have to find another way out." A sudden crashing noise reverberated throughout the room, sending shadows dancing wildly on the walls. I turned, my eyes wide in shock, panic rushing back in. Before I could say anything, the dim light flickered out. In an instant, darkness swallowed us whole, leaving only a suffocating barrier between us and the terrors above. Suddenly, a voice echoed in the gloom. "Welcome back, Brian." It was the twisted figure from before. In the absence of light, dread clawed at my insides. I had thought we could find answers, but now I realized the truth was darker than I had ever imagined. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Sarah's hand again, pulling her back toward the space we had just come from. There was no reasoning with whatever sought us in the dark. All I knew was that we had to get away before it was too late. As we turned back toward the doorway, I felt a presence looming behind us, flesh and shadow converging, a tangible threat that promised to pull us under. In that moment, the choice became clear, and an overwhelming instinct surged. We wouldn't hide anymore. Together we faced the dark, hearts pounding, breaths hitching, ready to confront whatever lay beyond the door. But just like that, the door burst open again, revealing the blinding light of dawn spilling in from outside, making the shadows shrink away and revealing a path to escape. "Let's go," I shouted, pulling Sarah toward the light. Finally, the chance to run away from the torment, the secrets and the magic of the night that could have devoured us. We rushed into the light, hearts pounding, stepping into the unknown where dawn promised a whisper of safety, but left questions lingering. As we ran toward freedom, I couldn't shake a feeling that the truth would always lurk just behind the shadows, waiting for the day we might return.